went further and explored the book of Matthew, and I came across a few interesting verses that I believe should be articulated so that we can share some really nice ideas from the Bible. So let's go ahead. So the first one is, let the let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn. Matthew chapter 13, verse 30. So, what Jesus says here is that, let the wheat and the weed grow together. So, let the good and the bad grow together. And when the time comes, get rid of the bad stuff and read in what's good. This is a very interesting idea because you see people taking the shortcut, and that might seem appealing to the person who's actually taking the right way. And usually it's the case that the person who's taking the righteous path takes much more time the person who's taking the shortcut, right? Because that's why it's called a shortcut. But there are times in life where things that you built might be taken away from you. So at that time, it is better to be the person who can make it all back, right? There's this idea which goes like this: money doesn't make up the man. So it means that if a person has made a lot of money, if he has taken the crooked path, there is a high chance that once he loses it all, he might not be able to make it back. It's like winning a lottery, right? You might win a lottery, but then it didn't make you the man who could make that kind of money back. Let's say a person wins $1 million, but the $1 million was won by that man by the by by luck. It was pure chance, right? But the person who acquires the skills to earn that kind of money can earn it back, because even if he or she loses it all, they could always earn it back because they still have the skills to earn that money back. And that is a very strong foundation upon which to build your kingdom. And that is the most amount of security that you can have for yourself, because you can lose everything but not your skills, and you can always make back what you lost, right? So let's go ahead. And now the famous story of Jesus walking on water. So we'll go ahead with that. So Jesus was preaching a lot of people on land, and then after that, Jesus remained on land and he asked his disciples to go away on a boat to a certain place. And now, when the disciples were on the boat, there was a storm, there were strong winds, and the waves were beating against their boat. And what happens is that the disciples, they see a figure, a hazy figure walking towards them in the storm, and they get frightened. They think, okay, what's that? So they get really afraid. The disciples get very afraid of this figure that's walking on water towards them. And Jesus says, you know what, do not be afraid. It's me, it's Jesus. So the disciples are still a bit wary. So I think one of the disciples says, Jesus, if it's you, let me walk on water and come towards you. And Jesus says, okay, you know what, come on. So what happens is that when the disciples starts walking on water, the storms get stronger, the waves get stronger, and the disciple gets really afraid and he starts to drown. At that moment, in Matthew chapter 14, verse 31, it says, Jesus immediately reached out his hand and took hold of him, saying to him, O you of little faith, why did you doubt? This is a really interesting thing for Jesus to say, is because no matter how bad the situation is or how worse the situation gets, you shouldn't lose faith. Even though the temptation to lose faith at that moment is really high, it is better to have faith no matter how strong the winds get. Because look, it's a guarantee if you lose faith, you're gonna drown. So it's better to just hold on to your faith that you will get through the storm, and it always does. Now the storm might last for a day or two, or probably for a year or for years. But the alternative is that to lose your faith at that moment, and then it's guaranteed that everything is going to get even worse than it had to. So the best bet is to have faith when there is a storm, even though the temptation to just give up is abnormally high, right? Because people can get really anxious about the duration of the storm that they have to face in their lives in order for the skies to clear up. And it's not easy, but the person who makes it out at the end is not the same person who went into the storm. It makes you a much stronger person, because if something like that comes up again, it doesn't really bother you that much. And in turn, it actually makes you a stronger person, a better person. It gives you the skills to actually take down the situation and make it and turn it to your favor. And that is something to see people do. And it's absolutely amazing, and we admire those kind of people, right? No matter how bad things were, but they climbed out of the hell that they were cast into. And that is the hero's journey, in a sense. So let's go ahead. It is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth. This defiles a person. Matthew chapter 15, verse 11. So it's something like, one of the things that all of us have trouble with is what to say and how to say it. Because everyone struggles to gain control of their tongue. I mean, I at least do. So, one form of self control which makes life much easier, it is just to take control of your tongue. And that is something that can be practiced every single day, because even in an office setting, you might say more than that you need to, which is not really needed. And now that thing has opened up a new can of worms, which was not worth exploring. Now you're wasting more time explaining the things, but it wasn't worth explaining in the first place. So it's a good practice to have to give people information to the extent that it is needed. Give them what they need to know, not more than what people need to know. So that makes life much more simpler. You don't have to go on explaining everything to everyone all the time, which can get tiring. And you might say something which is not really advantageous. Now it's not a call to lie. Don't it's not lying. It's like, just give people enough information so that what you said to them is enough for them to make sense of the situation. So, and every single time we open our mouth, we are actually crafting a reputation for ourselves, right? So, if you meet a person and you're meeting them for the first time, the first few words that you speak forms an instant image in their mind of what kind of person you are. So, the words that you speak have a much more larger effect than we know. So it is better to say a few words, but strong words, and you can actually practice this on a daily basis. And God only knows how amazing it can get in the next 5 years, or if you did it for the rest of your life, how better the life that you live would get, just because you chose to use your words very conservatively yet very effectively. That's one of the qualities effective leaders have. Moving ahead, let's go ahead. And said, truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Matthew chapter 18, verse 3. When I first heard this verse, I was in Sunday school and I thought, okay, you know what? I, adults are doomed then. Like, adults can't go to heaven. Is that right? But then again, now that I understand that, there are few characteristics of children that are really appealing. One of the characteristics is that they are always learning. If you see a child, it he or she is always learning the behaviors of the people that they interact with. So one of the things that adults do is that they stop learning because it takes a lot of effort to learn new things, and then you might come, and there's also a fear that you might come across an idea that destroys your beliefs. That's also a valid fear that people have when they talk to people that have opposite views to them. But it is actually beneficial to talk to people who have opposite views to you, because they can probably shed light on the parts where you are not willing to look. They'll give you a different perspective on the same topic, and then if you can articulate it for yourself, if you can understand it, it makes you a wiser person. So now you can think about the same thing from different angles. So your critical thinking skills go up. You are a better thinker. You can use more effective words. You can do analysis of things in the most effective manner. You become a better communicator by the end of it. And even though, and I do understand that, it is very risky to talk to people who have opposite views to you, but then again, that's what makes this interesting, because if everyone was agreeing with you all the time, I think life would get too boring. So that's the that were a few ideas that I thought I'd share with you guys. And thank you for your time, guys, and have a good week. I'll speak to you next time. All the best.